Okay, let's spend a little time getting to know the SPSS data environment. We've already done a practice example in Excel using exams and exam scores. So we're going to follow that same example here, and I'll show you how to enter the data, and then we'll follow that with some tutorials on how to analyze the data. So in SPSS, we start with what we call data view, and it looks a lot like Excel. So I could, for example, enter 4 exams, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if I want to label this column, notice it gives it a funny label right now. I can click on it, and it will take me into what's called variable view. Variable view is where you go if you want to change the name or the features of the variable. Data view is where you go if you want to look at or change the actual data listed. So let's call this first variable exam. And this just simply represents which exam it is, exam 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then let's take the second variable, like we did before, and call this grade. And this represents the grade that I get on the exam. Now, if I click back over to data view, I will see 1, 2, 3, and 4 listed for my exam. And now I need to enter the grade. So let's enter the grades as 60, 70, 70, and 100. Now, another thing that I can do with this information is I can go back to variable view and I can clean it up a little bit. So let's look at the features in variable view by clicking over. Now I can see for exam, I can tell SPSS a little bit about this variable so that it represents it more accurately. So this is just a variable that represents which number of exam it is. So I can go here to type. Right now it has it listed as a numeric variable, and that's fine, but I don't really need to have a decimal place for exams. So instead of 2 decimal places, I'm just going to put 0, and let's see what that does to the data. So it should now represent exams as whole numbers. So let's go back to data view and see. Notice now I have this cleaned up version where I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 whole numbers, and I don't have kind of the noise of these additional decimal points. I can also tell it more about what kind of variable this is by going here to measure. Now the type of measure could be scale, ordinal, or nominal. Because 1, 2, 3, and 4 simply represent which exam it is in the class, that's really sort of a category. It's sort of a name. I could just as easily write in the words first, second, third, and fourth. So I'm going to say that this is a nominal type of a measure because the numbers don't really mean anything. However, for the grade, these numbers are scale. So remember that we talked about interval and ratio variables as having equal intervals. So for example, in a 0 to 100 point exam, every point is worth the same. And so that would be at least interval data. And interval and ratio data are treated the same in SPSS, and they're both referenced as scale variables. So I'm going to click on scale for the grade type. I also can add a label. One of the things that is different about the label from the name in SPSS, a name has to be short and has to have no spaces in it. A label can be as long and descriptive as you want, and it can have spaces and parentheses and dashes and anything else that you want to notate. So sometimes we'll make a short nickname for a name here and a longer name here. So I might say grade received out of 100 points. That sort of reminds me what exactly this variable is measuring. And I also could change the decimal points here to 0 if I wanted, if the grade was listed that way. Now, if I go back to data view, I can see my variables here. I can also add information. Now I'm going to show you how to save this. So I can just go to save here, and I'm going to make sure that I put this in a place where I can find it again. And I'll change the file name just like anything in Word or Excel or other types of variables. And the final thing is that I notice that this will save as a .sav file. So when I go to look for it again, I can know that it's my data file by looking for .sav, the same way you would see a Word document as .doc or docx, the same way that PowerPoint is .ppt. So now I'm going to call this practice data, and I'm going to save it, and I'll be able to close out and pull it back up when I'm ready to use it again.